Hello everyone, welcome to our next session on eco-criticism. Alright, first in this session, I'm going to take a look at two things. First, in the first part, we will take a look at the difference between eco-criticism and green studies, or if there is a difference between the two. Alright, and then in the second part, we will begin with what prompted this kind of a study, alright, which talks about the crisis in humanism. Alright, so let's get started. Now we will come across both these terms being simultaneously used. Because you'll find that some makes use of eco-criticism, whereas some others make use of green studies. So which one should we choose? Eco-criticism or green studies? Which one? The difference is very simple. Eco-criticism is a term that is commonly used in the United States of America. Alright, so you'll find its proponents like Cheryl Gladfelty or Harold Frum make use of the term eco-criticism, especially in the related to the American West. You'll find that eco-criticism is the term that is used. Whereas if you look at the term, the equivalent for the term in the United Kingdom, you will find that green studies is popularly used here. Okay, this is similar to your new historicism and cultural materialism, or semiology and semiotics. Basically you'll find that there are very minor differences, but one major difference would be that one is used in the European continent, okay, mainly that of the United Kingdom, and the other one would be used in that of the United States of America. So similarly here, eco-criticism is a term that is commonly used in the United States of America, whereas green studies is commonly used in the United Kingdom. As a discipline, both these became popular only, let us say, in the 1990s or after 2000, okay. But you will find that there have been others who have attempted this kind of theorizing in their works as early as, okay, let us say 1970s or even before that. So the term eco-criticism was coined by William Ruckert. I think he is one of the theorists whom you have to study. Okay, William Ruckert, in his essay Literature and Ecology, an experiment in eco-criticism. And it is in this essay, which was written in 1978, that you will find that the term eco-criticism was first used. Alright, so see, this is 1978, but during that time there was nothing called as eco-criticism, or there is no separate discipline, or if at all people were attempting to do that, they were always in the margins. Okay, so you will find that in a modern sense, as I've already mentioned earlier, it was founded by Cheryl Gladfelty. Okay, Gladfelty, in fact, you find a book by her titled as the Eco-Criticism Reader, okay, coming in the 90s. And she also founded an organization which is functional even to this day, which is ASLE. Okay, ASLE is Association for the Study of Literature and Environment. Okay, ASLE. This was founded in 1992, and it also has a journal which is ISLE. Okay, Interdisciplinary Studies in Literature and Environment, established in 1993. Now you'll find that this is as the discipline, it becomes a global platform with the founding of this ASLE. Alright, even in India, you find that the ASLE chapter is there. For every state, there is actually a chapter. Alright, so and they hold conferences every year. Okay, some of them are activists, alright, who work, but most often you will find that the connection between literature and environment, and that is what is stressed and studied by the ASLE. So it becomes a global platform by the founding of the ASLE by Cheryl Gladfelty. So if you look at the roots of eco-criticism, I told you the term was coined by William Ruckert. If you look at the roots of eco-criticism, you will find that it has its bearings on American transcendentalism. Alright, transcendentalism, I think you have studied all these people, or at least one or two of them. You have Emerson, okay, Thoreau, all right, and Fuller. There are three works by these three people which on which the eco-criticism of USA is based. One is a work which came out in 1836, that is that of Ralph Waldo Emerson's Nature. And the second one by Margaret Fuller's, you must have studied her in feminism, all right, Summer on the Lakes during 1843. And Henry David Thoreau's Walden, which came out in 1845, or more than coming out, he's the time that he spent there. All right. So these three works are supposed to be the foundational works of American eco-centered kind of writing. All right. Though of course, from all this is not just the beginning, because after that you will find that there are several other kinds of offshoots that are developed in eco-criticism. But if you look at the origins, this is where it all begins. Okay, so it is from American transcendentalism that eco-criticism has its roots. Whereas, if you take a look at green studies, you will find that the roots or the bearings of green studies is based on, or the literary bearings of green studies is based on the British Romanticism of the 1790s. Alright, so on one side it is transcendentalism, because if you have read the transcendental works, okay, poetry, I am sure you have studied poetry. In American poetry you have studied that. If you read that, you will understand that it also talks of deep consciousness with okay, and then affinity with nature. That is something that you have seen. The same thing you can find it even in the British Romanticism, in the romantic poetry, okay, especially romantic poetry of Wordsworth, okay, and Shelley, or if you look at many of them, that is almost all the romantics, there you will find that there is a close affinity with nature. Okay, so for green studies, the literary bearing is the British Romanticism of the 1790s. Now, green studies was more of a new left program. Okay, left, it is a, because even if you look at materialism, it's a new left program in England. And just like I mentioned, William Rooker, even here, in as early as 1973, Raymond Williams had written the book The Country and the City. And this was an eco-critical text even before, or a green text if you like, even before the word called as eco-criticism or green studies was invented. Alright, and in that work he had problematized the explanation of the city okay, as the other of the simple, natural, unadulterated country. Alright, so the country was supposed to be very pristine, whereas city is just the opposite of that. So he in this particular work, as early as 1973, The Country and the City, he had explored the differences between the two, and that was that can be considered as a text which has a theoretical work. I wouldn't say a theoretical work, but a work which focuses on green studies. Alright, it came out in 1973. But you will find that there are works pertaining to eco-criticism and green studies that specifically emerges later after the 1990s. Let's take a look at them. So some of the theorists in eco-critics, that is, if you look at the US part, alright, are Cheryl Gladfelty, Harold Frum, William Rooker, Patrick D. Murphy. Alright, there are so many others too, but I'm just mentioning some of the prominent ones who are there. Alright, and very important work whose introduction you have to study as a part of this module is that of the Eco-Criticism Reader, Landmarks in Literary Ecology, which came out in 1996 and was edited by Cheryl Gladfelty and Frum. Okay, it was edited by both of them. If you look at the theorists who are there in the green studies, that is on the other side of the ocean, you will find that you have, or in the European continent, you will find Jonathan Bate, Lawrence Cook, Greg Garrard. I'm sure you are familiar with Greg Garrard, whose eco-criticism is, it's a book which students often make use of as a reference material. Okay, the work itself is titled as Eco-Criticism. And Terry Grifford. And some of the prominent works which were composed in the United Kingdom were that of Jonathan Bate's Romantic Ecology, Wordsworth and the Environmental Tradition, which came out in 1991. And if you want a counterpart for the eco-criticism reader of Glotfelty, you will find that in UK the counterpart is the Green Studies reader from Romanticism to Eco-criticism, which came out in 2000. There is another difference between eco-criticism and green studies. Now, if you look at eco-criticism, you will find that they were distrustful of certain basic assumptions in theory. Mind you must understand that when eco-criticism was in existence, there was literal theory or other theories were already in existence. Alright, so theory had certain basic assumptions. Alright. Which argued that all realities are linguistically and socially constructed. Alright, so I think you have studied this in your structuralism. In many of the isms that you have studied, you have understood that realities are all linguistically, through words and socially, they are constructed. Now, eco-criticism was distrustful of this kind of construction. Alright, so some of them says that especially like that of Karl Kroeber. Alright, he writes that no, this is not acceptable because this is an escape. You're trying to escape from an esoteric abstractness. Alright, you are, that is, through this kind of theorizing about literature, you are trying to, you're trying to, especially here he's talking in terms of nature, you're trying to escape from some kind of an abstractness that is there. And nature is not a concept that can be, or nature is not something that can be reduced to a concept. Well, let us say whether it is in structuralism or even in post-structuralism. So initially you will find that this kind of a distrust of the kind of abstraction that is found in, or the construction, linguistic construction of the reality in structuralism and post-structuralism. That was something that they did not trust. One very oft-quoted line, if you read the Eco-criticism reader, there is an essay by Kate Soper, alright, and in that she says, see, it is in language that hasn't got a hole in the ozone layer, alright. Actually, you can't just reduce nature just to some kind of an abstract concept. You have a hole in the ozone layer. So you can't simply say that through your language, through linguistically, you have just constructed a concept called as nature. No, it is not so. Alright, so this is one distrust in eco-criticism. What about green studies? So in green studies, especially Jonathan Bate is very critical of conservative Marxism, is critical of psychoanalysis, alright, in another way. What does he say? So he says that if you look at the way in which the natural world is represented in these theories, you will find that they are all read as metaphors. They are all read as symbols of political sentiments, symbols of repressed desires. Alright, this is how you have done. Alright, so conservative Marxism, new historicism, psychoanalysis, this is what you have reduced nature to. Alright, and so you have to return to a kind of practice where there is a kind of a literal reading of nature. At least in green studies, you should have a kind of reading where you do not read nature as a kind of a symbol. Let it be a symbol of political sentiments, of that of repressed desires, whatever. Alright, please don't read it as a kind of a symbol. So this is again another difference between eco-criticism and green studies, or I should say there is a similarity. That is, both of them are similar in this way that they do not trust the theory or the other theories that were in existence during that time. So from here, I'll move on to the crisis in humanism in the next video.